Hey everyone, tonight we're diving into one of the oldest stories ever written. Before Homer, before the Bible, before history had kings, there was Gilgamesh. He was a warrior, a tyrant, a builder of great cities, and a man who would do anything to escape death. But what he found wasn't immortality, it was something far more human. So, lay back, relax, and let the world slip away as we journey to ancient Mesopotamia and witness the rise and fall of a king in Gilgamesh, the man who would not die. They say the walls of Uruk reach the heavens, stone upon stone, smoothed by the hands of men, carved with names that no one remembers, only that they came from the will of a single man. Not a god, not a mortal, something in between. Gilgamesh, son of Lugalbanda, king of kings, builder of cities, breaker of bones. 2/3 divine, 1/3 man, though he would tell you that last part was a flaw. From the ziggurat's top, he could see the Tigris glinting in the distance, carving through the yellow plains like a serpent made of glass. Beyond it, the date orchards, the reed marshes, the boundaries of the known world. But it was what lay within the walls that he ruled. And it was that he watched now, arms crossed, bare chest glistening in the sun. Below him, Uruk stirred like an anthill. Merchants called out prices in the square. Scribes inked tablets in shaded corners. Women sang as they swept clay courtyards. Children laughed in the alleys. And all of it, every coin, every wall, every breath, bore his name. Yet the people cursed him. Not aloud, never aloud, but he saw it in their eyes. Too many sons taken for war. Too many daughters stolen to feed his lust. Too many nights when his voice rose like thunder, and no man could stop it. He was the storm, and they were tired of rain. That evening, the elders of Uruk met in secret at the temple of Ishtar. They lit no torches. No names were spoken. But the clay floor bore the weight of fear as surely as it bore their feet. The king grows cruel, said one. He is not cruel, said another. He is bored. Then let the gods give him something to break that is not us. And so they prayed, not for rain, not for crops, not for peace. They prayed for balance. They prayed for someone who could meet Gilgamesh eye to eye and hand to hand. Someone who would not kneel. Someone who could humble the storm. Far away, in the open wild beyond river and road, the gods heard, from the breath of the wind, from the soil still warm with last season's blood, from the groan of the earth itself. They shaped a man, not from royalty, not from temples, but from clay, and they called him Enkidu. Before the city, before stone, before law, there was wilderness, and in the wilderness there was a man who did not know his name. He ran with gazelles and drank from spring-fed pools. His skin was rough as bark, his hair tangled like the reeds along the river. His body bore no scars, not because he hadn't known danger, but because he had never known war. The beast did not fear him, because he was one of them. Enkidu was not born, he was shaped. When the gods heard the people of Uruk cry out, they gathered at twilight and whispered him into being, molded from clay and wind, blood and silence. He was strength without pride, power without cruelty, man without ambition. A mirror to Gilgamesh, but one the king would not like. He lived without need. When he hungered, he hunted. When he tired, he slept beneath fig trees or in the mouths of shallow caves. When storms came, he welcomed them like old friends. He did not dream. He did not wonder. And yet, the earth changed around him. The lion no longer lay beside him. The deer shied at his scent. The water rippled when he approached. Something was shifting. Something human. One morning, Enkidu knelt at a stream to drink. His reflection wavered on the surface, not as a beast, but as a man. And for the first time he felt alone. He roared. It shook the birds from the trees, but it did not answer the ache in his chest. The gods watched. They knew it was time. In a nearby village, not far from Uruk's reach, a trapper's boy returned from the edge of the forest, pale and breathless. "There's a man," he cried, "a wild one." Naked, hairy, faster than wolves, he smashed the traps with his hands. The trapper, fearing for his livelihood, left at once and journeyed to Uruk. There, trembling before the king, he told of the wild man who freed the animals and walked among them like a spirit. Gilgamesh laughed. "Then we'll tame him, the same way we tame beasts and gods alike." He summoned Shamat, a temple priestess, skilled in the sacred rites of love, language, and civilization. "Go to the forest," he told her. "Find this wild man. Show him what it means to be human." She bowed and went. It took her 6 days and 7 nights to find Enkidu. When she did not fear him. She waited near the spring, patient. When he came to drink, she stood tall, robed in crimson silk, her hair braided with gold, her voice soft as evening rain. "Come," she said, "lie beside me. The gods have sent me for you." Enkidu did not understand her words, but he felt something stir. Not hunger, not instinct, longing. They lay together beneath the fig trees, and when they rose, the forest had changed. The animals fled from him. The birds no longer sang near his feet. He felt weakness in his limbs and fire in his chest. The signs of a heart newly awakened. He had eaten from the fruit of knowledge. He could never return to what he was. Shamat smiled gently. "Now," she said, "let me teach you to speak." And so he did. Word by word, step by step, Enkidu became man. He clothed himself in wool and learned to walk without crouching. He drank wine and felt it burn his throat. He tasted bread and wept at its warmth. "There is a king in Uruk," Shamat told him. "He rules with no equal. The people suffer. They say you were made to stop him." Enkidu looked at the horizon, and for the first time in his life, he felt a name forming in his chest. Not his own, Gilgamesh. She was not just a priestess. She was a daughter of the temple, raised beneath golden arches and painted stars. Shamat had learned to walk by candlelight and recite sacred hymns before she could tie her hair. She spoke in the language of gods and of men, and she knew which voice to use for each. The people whispered about women like her. Some called her holy, others called her a whore. But in truth, she was a bridge between flesh and spirit, between what is and what might be. And that was why she was chosen. She led Enkidu from the spring as gently as one coaxes a frightened colt. He walked behind her, clothed now, but still uneasy, still twitching at every sound, still sniffing the air like the wolves he once called kin. But his eyes were changing. They no longer darted, they lingered. On her, on the sky, on the tracks of humans pressed into dry mud. They came to a shepherd's camp by nightfall. Fires flickered. Laughter danced between the tents. Shamat took Enkidu's hand and led him to the circle. At first, the men tensed. They saw the size of him, the raw strength in his shoulders, the scars that were not made by weapons, but by trees and claws and time. But then they saw how he held her hand, like it was the only thing he knew not to crush, and they welcomed him. That night, he tasted roasted lamb. He drank fermented date wine and fell laughing into the firelight. He wrestled the strongest of them, not to dominate, but to learn. And he learned fast. Within hours, he moved like them, sat like them, spoke their tongue with simple words and watchful pauses. By morning, the herders no longer called him beast, they called him brother. But with every step closer to civilization, Enkidu felt something strange in his chest, a tightness, a pulling. He awoke before dawn and stood alone on a hill, looking toward the distant towers of Uruk. He did not know the name of the feeling. Restlessness, purpose, destiny. Shamat joined him. She carried 2 cups of honeyed milk. "You feel it, don't you?" she asked. He nodded. "I dream. What do you see?" "Stone, fire, a man who roars like a lion." "That's him," she said. "Gilgamesh." He didn't speak for a long time. Then, "Why does he roar?" Shamat looked out at the dust-thick horizon. "Because no one ever told him not to. Because the gods made him powerful, but forgot to give him a friend." Enkidu turned to her. "And me?" She met his gaze. "You were made to remind him." Meanwhile, in Uruk, Gilgamesh could not sleep. He paced the temple steps in the dark, bare feet slapping ancient stone, dreams gnawing at his mind like rats at a sealed gate. He had seen it. A man, massive, covered in fur, his face strange but not unfamiliar, standing at the gates of Uruk, blocking them, challenging him, and something deeper still. Not hatred, not even fear. Recognition. The priests said nothing. The guards did not ask, but the stars above Uruk shifted slightly in the sky, and the gods, watching from realms of wind and fire, whispered to one another. Soon, the gates of Uruk were carved from cedar and inlaid with copper, towering over men like mountains loom over valleys. They had never been closed. No army had dared approach. No enemy had lasted long enough to see the walls. And Gilgamesh? He ruled not behind them, but above them, unbothered, unmatched, until that morning, when the guards on the eastern watch saw a figure rising from the dust. Enkidu came without armor, no sword at his side, no banner above him, just a simple robe tied at the waist, his hair pulled back, and resolve in his eyes. He walked like stone walks, steady, inevitable. People stepped aside, not from fear, but from awe. Not since Gilgamesh had they seen someone with such presence, such gravity. Whispers bloomed through the market like fire across dry fields. Who is he? A god? A brother of Gilgamesh? Or his shadow? At the palace, Gilgamesh heard the commotion. He stood at the top of the steps, arms folded, watching the stranger make his way forward. He felt it again. That pull in the gut, that itch beneath the skin. Not a threat, a summons. They locked eyes across the square. Neither bowed, neither smiled. 2 men, 1 throne. No room for both. Without a word, Gilgamesh leapt from the steps, a blur of bronze and fury. The impact cracked stone. Enkidu didn't flinch. He stepped forward, and the two collided like storms. The first blow rang like thunder. The second split a pillar. The third shook the courtyard. They wrestled like lions in the sand, not for victory, but for meaning. Each man testing the other's soul, not just his strength. Crowds gathered, silent, wide-eyed. No one dared interfere. They knew this was not a battle for blood. This was the battle the gods had ordained. Gilgamesh's fist met Enkidu's palm. Enkidu's knee struck Gilgamesh's ribs. Dust rose. Stone cracked. But neither yielded. Until, at last, they paused, chest heaving, hands trembling. And then, laughter. Low at first, then booming. Gilgamesh laughed like a man who had never laughed without cruelty. And Enkidu, wild, wild Enkidu, laughed like someone who had just discovered his name. Gilgamesh stepped back, shaking his head. You fight like the gods made you themselves. Enkidu smiled. They did. Gilgamesh offered his hand. Enkidu took it, and the ground beneath Uruk exhaled. That night, a feast was held, not for conquest, but for balance. The people rejoiced, for they had seen something new in their king's eyes, not arrogance, but something close to joy. And at his side now sat a man, not beneath him, but beside him, a second lion. In the heavens the gods watched, and one of them, Enlil, the god of wind and authority, leaned forward and whispered, "They are joined. And now the world will change. For better or worse." The city was not enough, not for Gilgamesh, though he now had a brother by his side. Though the people praised him in the streets and sang his name beneath the stars, it wasn't enough. He looked at the stone walls and saw only what he had already conquered. And in the empty space beyond the map's edge, he saw what still eluded him, a name that would outlive death. There is a forest, he told Enkidu one morning. The cedar forest, where the trees touch the sky and the air smells of the gods. I know it, Enkidu said quietly. I was born of its wind. I played beneath its shade. Then you know what guards it. Enkidu turned his face to the wind. Humbaba, the forest demon. Breath of plague, keeper of the 7 auras, a creature even the gods feared. You want to kill him? Enkidu asked. Gilgamesh smiled. No, I want to defeat him. Enkidu shook his head. Why? We have peace. You have glory. I don't want glory, Gilgamesh said, stepping forward. I want immortality. In story, in stone, in memory. I want men to speak my name long after my bones are dust. You'll find dust faster chasing demons. Gilgamesh grinned. Then we'd best run quickly. They prepared for the journey. The elders warned them. The priest fasted for 7 days. The people wept and sang both, for no man who entered the forest had ever returned. But the king would not be dissuaded, and his brother would not let him go alone. Before they departed, Gilgamesh's mother, Ninsun, bathed in sacred oil and climbed the ziggurat to pray. She begged the sun god Shamash to protect her son. She anointed Enkidu as well, calling him my second born, and gave them both charms of silver to wear at their necks. You are clay, she whispered to Enkidu, but so is the earth. Hold him upright when he forgets how to stand. And to Gilgamesh, you seek a name that outlives death. Be sure it is not the only thing you leave behind. They set out at dawn, Gilgamesh in gold and bronze, Enkidu in plain wool, his axe strapped to his back, side by side, like they had always walked that way. For 6 days and 7 nights, they travelled, over black plains and the white deserts. They fought lions, slept in trees, drank rain from leaves, each step deeper into the unknown, stripped away a little of the city in them, but not the brotherhood. That only grew. At last, they reached the edge of the cedar forest. It rose like a wall of emerald fire, thick and tall, the trunks wide as towers, the leaves sharp as blades. The air buzzed with something more than life. Magic, warning. And in the distance, a low growl echoed through the roots, not of hunger, but of ownership. Enkidu's face darkened. He's awake. Gilgamesh unsheathed his sword. Then so are we. They stepped between the trees. The forest swallowed them whole, and somewhere deep within, the demon of the wood turned its head and smiled. The cedar forest did not welcome them. It watched them. Each branch bent slightly as they passed beneath it. Each bird fell silent. Each root seemed to shift when they weren't looking. The air itself grew thicker, heavier, like honey and ash. Gilgamesh wiped sweat from his brow, though the air was cold. Enkidu said nothing, but his eyes scanned every shadow. He knew this place. He knew its rules, and he knew its guardian. By the second day, the forest began to whisper. Not words, just sounds in the shape of thoughts, like breath near the back of your neck, like teeth grinning in the dark. Gilgamesh tried to sleep, but the whispers followed him. They said, "You should not have come. You will be forgotten in the dark." He waits, and he remembers. He turned to Enkidu. "You said you knew him." "I do." "Then what is he?" Enkidu stared into the trees. "He is punishment." That night Gilgamesh dreamed. A mountain fell upon him, vast, suffocating. Just when he thought he'd be crushed, a hand reached from the rubble and pulled him free. He awoke, gasping. Enkidu sat beside him, sharpening his axe. "You dreamed again." Gilgamesh nodded. "I was buried, but someone saved me." Enkidu didn't look up. "Then we'll survive this." By the third day, the trees opened into a great clearing, and at its center stood the thing they had come for. Humbaba. He was not just a demon. He was the forest made flesh, skin like bark and lava, limbs like living roots, eyes that burned without flame. He towered over them, but did not charge. He only stood, waiting, as though he had known they would come. His voice shook the clearing. "Two ants come to kill a mountain." Gilgamesh raised his sword. Humbaba laughed, a sound like trees being torn apart in a storm. "You think you are brave," the demon said. "You think the gods will remember you for this. They will remember only your screams." He stepped forward, and the air warped with heat and rot. The ground blackened beneath his feet. Gilgamesh hesitated. For the first time he felt fear, but Enkidu stepped in front of him. Not with arrogance, with purpose. "Do you remember me?" he asked Humbaba. The demon paused. "Clayborn." "Wild maid." "I am not your enemy," Enkidu said, "but I stand beside one who must be tested." "Tested?" Humbaba snarled. "He comes for glory. But glory is paid in flesh." Then he attacked. The clearing erupted in fire and wind. Trees shattered. Ash filled the sky. Gilgamesh ducked a swing that would have broken a house. Enkidu charged from the side, driving his axe deep into the demon's thigh. Humbaba roared. The forest roared with him. The battle raged for hours, metal against earth, fury against fate. Gilgamesh fought like a man possessed, every blow fueled by the need to matter, to be seen by time. Enkidu fought like a man defending a brother, every strike meant to shield. Together, they pushed the demon back, and at last, Gilgamesh drove his sword into Humbaba's throat. The demon staggered, fell. The forest trembled. Humbaba gasped, blood like sap pouring from his mouth. "Mercy," he rasped. "You have defeated me. Let me live. I will serve you. I will be your guardian." Gilgamesh lowered his blade. But Enkidu stepped forward. "No, he cannot live. If you spare him, he will rise again. He will destroy what we've built." "You know this," Gilgamesh looked down at the demon and saw himself. Pride, power, rage. He gritted his teeth and finished it. The forest fell silent. No birds, no wind, just stillness. They stood over the corpse, blood on their hands, breathing hard. Gilgamesh turned to Enkidu. "We did it. They'll sing of this." Enkidu nodded, but his eyes held no joy, only foreboding. In the heavens the gods stirred. Enlil, the god of order and fate, stood from his throne. "They killed the guardian I placed," he said. "They have spilled divine blood. and he looked down upon them. 2 brothers standing among ruin, and said, "One of them must die." They returned to Uruk like heroes. Crowds spilled into the streets to meet them, tossing flowers, pouring wine, singing songs that hadn't existed the day before. Children chased after them. Women wept at the sight of them. Old men lifted trembling hands to the sky in praise. 2 men, cloaked in cedar sap and blood, had faced what gods feared, and returned. They dragged behind them the crown of Humbaba, tied in cedar ropes, heavier than a man's torso. They placed it at the temple steps as an offering, and for a moment, even the priest dared not speak. It was undeniable. Gilgamesh and Enkidu were no longer just men. That night, a feast was held. Meat roasted on open fires. Wine poured endlessly. The entire city pulsed with joy. Gilgamesh stood among them, bare-chested, laughing, his hair wild with sweat and victory. And that was when Ishtar saw him. The goddess of love and war descended from her temple of lapis lazuli in robes of fire and rose petals. The crowd parted for her like clay before the sculptor. Her eyes were lined with kohl, her lips the color of fresh blood, her voice like music wrapped in silk. She approached Gilgamesh, and all fell silent. "You are beautiful," she said, "and bold. You have slain what even gods could not. You are worthy." He bowed his head slightly. "I am honored, Lady of Heaven." "Be more than honored," she purred. "Be mine." Gasps rippled through the gathered crowd. She stepped closer. "Take my hand. Be my consort. Rule beside me in the heavens. I will give you a chariot of gold, lions to pull it, jewels enough to blind empires. You will never grow old. You will never die. You will be a god, as I am." Gilgamesh looked up at her, the goddess in all her glory, and smiled, but not kindly. "No," he said. The word struck like a slap. "You offer eternity, but you are faithless. You seduce kings, but then curse them. You loved Tammuz, left him to rot in the underworld. You loved the eagle and broke his wings. You loved the shepherd and turned him to a wolf." He stepped back. "I will not be one more corpse in your garden." The silence was immediate, sharp. Ishtar's face darkened. Her eyes flared. She turned without a word and ascended the temple steps, and from the heavens she screamed. That night she went to Anu, her father, king of the gods. "Give me the bull of heaven," she demanded. "Gilgamesh has insulted me. Let him see what happens to those who scorn the divine." Anu hesitated. "If I unleash the bull," he warned, "the earth will crack. Thousands will die." "Then let them die," Ishtar said coldly. "Let the ground drink their blood. Or I will shatter the gates of the underworld, and the dead will walk among the living." Anu sighed and gave her the leash. The bull of heaven descended the next morning. It struck the earth outside Uruk with hooves of bronze, and the ground split. Wells dried, fields cracked. People screamed as fissures swallowed them whole. Gilgamesh and Enkidu raced to the walls, just in time to see the creature charge. It was massive, as tall as a ziggurat, its eyes glowing red, its breath boiling the air. Chains of starlight dangled from its neck, trailing sparks. Enkidu growled. "Ishtar sends her pets." Gilgamesh nodded. "Let's return it in pieces." The battle was brutal. The bull gored dozens before the brothers reached it. Enkidu leapt onto its back, clinging to the ridged spine, axe flashing. Gilgamesh circled, striking at its legs. The bull roared, but they fought like storm and fire. At last, Enkidu drove his blade beneath its jaw, and Gilgamesh pierced its heart. The bull staggered and fell, dead. Ishtar, watching from the temple, screamed again, this time in rage. She cursed them. She tore her robes. And Gilgamesh, bloody and defiant, tore a chunk from the bull's thigh and threw it at her feet. "Take your gift back," he shouted. "Tell the gods their monsters are no match for men." The crowd roared with him, but Enkidu, standing just behind, did not cheer. He looked at the blood in his hands and at the sky. He did not know why, but he felt the gods watching. The bull of heaven lay in the dust. Its body stretched across the plain like a broken mountain. Ribs exposed, golden blood seeping into the soil. Flies buzzed. The air hung heavy with heat and silence. The people of Uruk celebrated. For the second time in weeks, the king had conquered the unconquerable. Gilgamesh stood on the creature's back like a statue of bronze, drinking in the cheers. But Enkidu stood apart from him now. He did not raise his arms. He did not smile. He watched the sky, and it did not smile back. That night the stars moved, not slowly as they always had, but suddenly, as if the sky had twitched in pain. In the temples the priests dropped their scrolls. In the hills the jackals fell silent, and in the heavens the gods gathered. They came not as voices, but as judgment. Enlil, god of wind and law, rose first. "These men have crossed the line." They slew Humbaba, whom I placed to guard the sacred forest. They slew the bull of heaven, whom Ishtar summoned as her right Ishtar, her face streaked with tears and rage pointed downward. They mocked me. They struck me down in front of mortal Shamash. The sun god, who had long favoured Gilgamesh, spoke quietly. "They are bold, too bold, and boldness in mortals must not go unpunished." The gods nodded, and Enlil declared, "One of them must die." In Uruk, Enkidu awoke gasping. His heart thundered. He clutched his chest as if something had been pulled from him in the night. Shamet came to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You dreamed?" He nodded. "The gods. They were speaking. I couldn't hear the words, but I felt them." He stood and looked to the east, toward the forest, toward death. Over the next days, Enkidu began to change. He slowed. He coughed, though no sickness touched the city. His hands shook when he held a cup. His dreams turned to dust and chains. Gilgamesh noticed. "What is it, brother? Are you wounded?" Enkidu smiled faintly. "No wounds, just a weight I cannot put down." They walked together through the orchards beyond the walls. Gilgamesh tried to speak of new battles, of new lands to conquer, but Enkidu was quiet. Finally, he said, "Do you think the gods are proud of us?" Gilgamesh laughed. "We made them remember what it is to be afraid." Enkidu nodded. "Then I think they will answer that memory." The fever came 3 nights later, hot, violent. He collapsed in the palace halls, shaking, soaked in sweat. Gilgamesh lifted him, carried him to the high chamber, sent priests running, burned incense, crushed herbs. Nothing worked. The city waited in horror. And Gilgamesh refused to leave his side. For 12 days, Enkidu suffered. And on the 13th, he began to speak in fevered rage. "Curse the hunter who found me. Curse the gate through which I entered the city. Curse the woman who tamed me. No, no, bless her. She gave me love. She gave me you." He turned to Gilgamesh, his eyes already distant. "We struck down monsters, brother. But now, I see the monster, waiting for us all." Gilgamesh held his hand, trembling. "You will not die. I won't allow it. I'll bring you the gods themselves. I'll pull you back." But Enkidu only smiled. Even kings can't stop the river from flowing. And then he was gone. The breath left his body like a candle snuffed. The hand that had once tamed lions fell still, and the city wept. But no one wept like Gilgamesh. He tore his robes, he smeared ash into his skin, he screamed into the night and shattered the walls of his own palace with his fists. "Is this what it means to be mortal?" he cried to the gods. "To build and fight and love, only to watch it rot?" There was no answer, only silence, only loss, only death. He walked through Uruk barefoot, silent. Not a king, just a man. At Enkidu's grave, Gilgamesh knelt, and for the first time in his life, he spoke a prayer. Not for victory, not for power, but for understanding. If death takes even the strongest of us, then what is left? The grave was shallow. Gilgamesh had ordered it dug outside the walls, beneath a cedar tree. He placed Enkidu there himself, limb by limb, washing the body with wine, covering it in fine cloth, sealing it in stone. No priests, no songs, just silence, the kind that clings, the kind that haunts. He did not return to the palace. He slept by the grave. For 7 days and 7 nights he sat with the corpse, refusing food, refusing drink, hoping, no, demanding that Enkidu would rise again. But flesh turns, and even a brother becomes unrecognizable in death. On the 8th day, Gilgamesh stood and screamed, "I killed Humbaba. I slew the bull. I defied the gods, and still, I could not save him." He tore the amulet from his neck and flung it into the dirt. He ripped his royal sash and wrapped himself in animal skins. Then he turned his face from Uruk, from the towers, the people, the throne, and walked into the wilderness. He did not know where he was going, only that he was done being a king. He no longer sought victory. He now sought answers, or revenge, or a miracle. He cursed everything. First, the gods. "You made us strong so you could break us. You gave us minds so we could feel fear. You made us love just so we would know the pain of loss." Then, the temple. "Your prayers are dust, your incense is smoke. You speak to deaf skies and call it worship." Then, the forest. "You whispered dreams into our heads and lured us with promises. Now you rot with him, and finally, himself. I thought I was more than a man. I was wrong. I was never anything at all." He wandered, muttering, clothed in skins and silence. The people who saw him did not recognize their king. His eyes were hollow. His voice cracked from disuse. He spoke to no one except the wind and the sun and the memory of a friend buried beneath a cedar tree. One night he sat by a dried-up stream. A jackal approached. Gilgamesh reached for his blade, but then stopped. The beast sat beside him, stared at him, and left. And it was then that Gilgamesh asked the question, aloud, to no one, "Does anything live forever?" And a voice answered, not a god, not a ghost, just a whisper carried on wind. "There is one who does." Gilgamesh looked up, his face once bright with pride, now cracked by sorrow and dust. "Who?" And again the whisper came, Utnapishtim, the one who survived the flood, the one whom the gods granted life eternal. Gilgamesh stood. Every part of him ached, from walking, from weeping, from hoping, but something inside him stirred, a purpose not born of ego, a question greater than glory. "Then I will find him," he said to the dark, "and I will ask him how to conquer death. If I must walk the edge of the world to do it, I will." In Uruk, the throne sat empty. The king was gone. But in the wild, a man wrapped in skins began his journey, not to claim a kingdom, but to defy the grave. The mountains swallowed him, ridges of stone like broken teeth, valleys where the wind screamed like a widow, sky as white as bone. Gilgamesh walked, sand in his mouth, blood on his heels, sun above, hot and uncaring, He spoke no words. His tongue had nothing left to say. He crossed places where no map reached, places the gods had left unfinished, forests that bled sap as thick as tar, hills where birds spoke in backwards words and trees bent to watch him pass. And still he searched for Utnapishtim, for the one who did not die. At night his dreams twisted. He saw Enkidu standing on a cliff, smiling. But when Gilgamesh ran to him, the cliff crumbled and the sea opened below. Other nights he saw Enkidu buried beneath the streets of Uruk, whispering, "Why do you walk the world when I am waiting beneath it?" Gilgamesh would wake gasping, fists clenched around nothing. In a canyon where the sun never reached, he met lions, 5 of them, golden eyes, ribbed with hunger. They circled. He welcomed them. No blade, no shield, just open arms. "If you wish to eat a king," he said, "take your fill, but know that I carry the scent of gods and ghosts." The lions stared, then bowed and left. He passed a stone idol, half buried in sand. Its face had been worn smooth by wind. Carved beneath it, "All that lives must die, and all that dies forgets," Gilgamesh spat. "I will not be forgotten." On the 27th day, his skin cracked like dry bark. He chewed roots, drank from puddles. Once, he licked dew from a vulture's feathers. He did not care. He would reach the end of the world on hands and knees if he had to. Finally, on the edge of the mountains of Mashu, he saw it, a black gate, half sunken in earth, guarded by 2 beings, not quite man, not quite beast. Their bodies shimmered like obsidian, and scorpion tails curled behind their backs. They were the scorpion men, guardians of the path between life and death. They raised their weapons. "Turn back," they said, their voices in unison, like 2 stones grinding together. "No man may pass." Gilgamesh did not kneel. He looked them in the eye, wild, cracked, burning. "I am Gilgamesh, son of Ninsun, king of Uruk, slayer of Humbaba, killer of the bull of heaven. I come not for conquest, but for truth. I seek Utnapishtim, the one who lives beyond death." The scorpion men said nothing. The silence stretched. Then, slowly they stepped aside, and one of them whispered, "Then pass. But know this, beyond here lies darkness, a tunnel of 12 leagues, with no light. If you falter, you will never leave." Gilgamesh did not answer. He stepped into the mouth of the tunnel, and the light of the world vanished behind him. It was blackness, total. He could not see his hands. He could not hear his steps. He ran his fingers along the stone walls to guide him, and they felt alive, breathing, pulsing. Hours passed, or days. He didn't know. Time meant nothing in the dark. Thoughts bloomed like fungi in the silence. What if Utnapishtim is a lie? What if Enkidu waits for me in death, not life? What if I was meant to die back in Uruk, and this is punishment? He stumbled, fell, crawled, laughed, wept, raged, and then a breeze, a scent, light. He emerged, blinking into a garden unlike any on earth. Trees of crystal, fruit like fire, water that hummed with music. He fell to his knees. He had passed through the darkness. But what waited ahead would test more than his will. Somewhere beyond the garden. Utnapishtim waited, and so did the truth. The air in the garden shimmered. Leaves glowed like moonstone. Vines pulsed with soft green light. The sky above was a velvet grey, neither day nor night, a place between time and eternity. Gilgamesh wandered in awe. Not even the hanging gardens of Uruk had looked like this. But he did not stop to marvel. He had come for a man, one who had crossed the veil and returned, one who still lived. He found him at the edge of a lake the color of obsidian. An old man, thin, quiet, hair white as salt, skin like worn leather. He sat cross-legged on a stone slab, feeding crumbs to a bird that perched on his knee. His eyes did not glow. His hands did not shake the earth. He looked ordinary, but Gilgamesh knew. "Are you him?" he asked. "Utnapishtim, the man who cannot die." The old man looked up. His eyes were deep, too deep. He smiled faintly. "And are you the king who cannot accept death?" Gilgamesh dropped to his knees. "Tell me how to escape it, I beg you. My brother Enkidu is dead. I've fought monsters, walked through darkness, past the gates of the scorpion men. I've bled, wept, and burned. All for this. Your secret Utnapishtim studied him." Then sighed. "Sit down, king of Uruk. Let me tell you a story, one the world has tried to forget." And he began. "Long ago, before the world was shaped as it is now, I was a man, a king. I lived by a great river, with a wife and sons and gardens that reached the horizon. One day, the gods grew angry with humankind. We were too loud, too many, too greedy, so they decided to wash the world clean, with a flood. But the god Ea came to me in a dream. He whispered, 'Build a boat, carry life upon it, beasts, seeds, songs, save what you can.' And I did. For 6 days and 7 nights, the storm devoured everything. Mountains vanished, cities drowned. The gods wept at the destruction, even those who had wished for it. When the waters calmed, my boat rested on a mountain. I released a dove, then a raven. When it did not return, I knew the land had re-emerged. The gods saw me. They argued. Some said I had defied fate. Others said I had preserved hope. In the end, they granted me and my wife a gift, eternal life, but also exile. We live here beyond the world. Death cannot touch us, but neither can life. I do not age, but I do not grow." He looked at Gilgamesh with soft, sad eyes. "You want what I have, but you do not understand it." Gilgamesh clenched his fists. "You were saved. You know how. Tell me." Utnapishtim tilted his head. "I was saved by mercy. You seek salvation through force." Gilgamesh shook with frustration. "There must be a way." Utnapishtim stood slowly. "Then prove yourself. Let me test the truth of your heart." He pointed to a flat stone nearby. "Stay awake for 7 days and 7 nights. If you can resist the pull of death in its smallest form, sleep, then perhaps you are worthy to resist it forever." Gilgamesh laughed. "That's all?" He lay down, closed his eyes, and in moments, he slept. Utnapishtim's wife came to him quietly. "He is only a man," she said. "Yes," Utnapishtim replied, "and that is all the gods ever allowed him to be." Each day, she baked a loaf of bread and placed it beside the sleeping king. By the 7th day, there were 7 loaves. The first was hard as stone, the last still warm. When Gilgamesh awoke, he sat up groggily. "Where am I? How long was I?" Then he saw the loaves, 7 of them, each one a marker of time he had lost. His face crumpled. "I failed." Utnapishtim nodded. "As all men do, eventually." But the wife spoke again. "He came so far. Should he leave with nothing?" Utnapishtim sighed, then turned back to Gilgamesh. "There is one thing I can offer, a gift, not a promise. Beneath the sea grows a plant. It does not grant immortality, but it will restore your youth." Gilgamesh stood, revived by hope. "Where?" They led him to the shore. He tied stones to his feet and dove deep. The water stung. Darkness pulled. But he found it, a plant with thorns like roses and a scent like morning. He cut it free and rose gasping from the depths. "I have it," he whispered. "I will take it back to Uruk. I will give it to the old, the sick. Then I will use it last." Utnapishtim only nodded. "Be sure to hold it tightly." Gilgamesh left the garden. Behind him, the immortal man watched the waves and said nothing, because he knew. Even the best things can be lost. He walked home, not in glory, not in rage, but with something softer in his chest, a hope he hadn't dared feel since Enkidu's death. In his pack, carefully wrapped in woven cloth, he carried the flower of youth. Its scent filled the air around him, sweet and sharp. Its thorns had pierced his skin when he touched it, but he had bled willingly. He imagined what it could do, not for him, but for the people of Uruk, for the old woman who swept the temple steps, for the boy who limped with twisted legs, for the weeping mother who had lost a child, and last of all, for himself. "I will use it only after they have all tasted it," he told the wind. "Then, and only then, I will be young again, and live better than I ever did." Before he stopped to rest beside a cool, clear pool. The desert lay quiet around him. He placed his pack carefully beside him and waded into the water. Let it wash the dust from his skin. Let it soothe the journey from his bones. He closed his eyes, just for a moment, and in that moment, a serpent came, drawn by the scent, silent. It slid from the brush. Its scales shimmered in the sun. It found the pack, unwrapped the cloth with tongue and fang, and swallowed the flower whole. When Gilgamesh climbed from the water, refreshed and humming, he saw only the cloth and a long, winding trail in the sand. His heart stopped. He dropped to his knees, frantically digging through the bag. No number. No, but the flower was gone. He screamed, louder than he had when Enkidu died. He screamed until the desert echoed with his grief. He struck the ground with his fists, tore at the sand, begged the gods for mercy, but no answer came. Only the wind and the distant hiss of a snake disappearing into the rocks. He sat there for hours, staring at the horizon. Then he laughed, not bitterly, not angrily, just quietly. "Even now, I understand," he stood, dusty, empty-handed, but changed. Immortality was never mine to take. But maybe memory can be. And so he walked home, to Uruk. The walls were just as he had left them, towering, carved, eternal. The city opened its arms to him. The people cried out his name, thinking he returned victorious, but he did not raise a sword, or a trophy, just his hand. He went to the temple, burned incense, sat in silence. He visited Enkidu's grave and whispered, "I couldn't save you. I couldn't save myself, but I will save your story." And then he called the scribes. He told them everything: the forest, the demon, the gods, the bull, the death, the grief, the journey, the serpent, the flower, the failure. He told them with tears in his eyes, and they wrote it down in clay, line by line, so it would never be forgotten. So that you, reading this now, would know that Gilgamesh loved, that Gilgamesh lost, that Gilgamesh sought eternity and found something better, a name remembered, a friend mourned, a story told. The gates of Uruk stood open, not because they had been left undefended, but because the people had watched the horizon every day, waiting for the figure they feared might never return. Now he did, but not in gold, not in jewels, not on a chariot, on foot, alone, wrapped in the skins of beasts, his eyes sunken, his beard wild. At first, they didn't recognize him. Then someone whispered, "It's the king," and silence fell across the square. He passed through the city slowly. People stepped aside, not from fear this time, but from reverence. There was no feast, no song, just the sound of sandals on stone. He stopped before the temple, raised his eyes to the heavens, and said only, "I have seen the ends of the world. I have walked through shadow. I have held the hand of death and let it go." Then he bowed, not to the gods, but to the city. The elders met him with hesitation. They expected commands. He gave them silence. They expected war. He offered peace. They watched him sit on the throne again, not like a tyrant rising, but like a father returning. He changed Uruk, not with decrees shouted from balconies, but with listening. He sat with the bricklayers who mended the walls, ate with the scribes who recorded the market weights, spoke to widows in the courtyards, to soldiers in the stables. He had seen what mattered, and it was not power, it was people. He took the city's wealth and built gardens. He reopened the schools. He ordered the streets to be swept daily, so no child would walk barefoot on broken stone. He declared a festival each year for the memory of Enkidu, and on that day, no sword could be drawn, no taxes collected. Let us honor the ones we lose by caring for those we still have. And still, at night, he dreamed of the cedar forest, of lions, of a serpent vanishing into the sand, of a man who had once been wild and had once been his brother. But he no longer woke in rage. He woke in remembrance and wrote it down. One evening, he climbed the tallest tower in Uruk and looked out across the land. The walls, his walls, stretched for miles. Inside them, safety, song, laughter, life. Outside, wind and time and forgetting. He pressed a hand to the stone. This will crumble. Then to his heart. So will this. And then to the clay tablet in his other hand. But this might not. And so the man who sought immortality found instead a story worth telling. And in the telling, he became more than a king. He became a name etched into eternity. Not because he never died, but because he finally understood what it meant to live. Years passed. Uruk thrived. Its walls stood strong. Its people flourished. The city pulsed with life. But its king, once the storm in its heart, had grown quiet. Not weak, wise. Gilgamesh had not sought war since returning from his journey. He no longer boasted, no longer demanded, no longer tried to wrestle meaning from the world with clenched fists. He had learned that life is not seized, it is lived. Some days he walked the gardens barefoot, listening to the wind in the palms. Other days he sat with children, telling stories of lions and cedar trees, and a man named Enkidu, who once ran with the wild things and changed the fate of a king. The children always asked, "Did you defeat death, King Gilgamesh?" And he would smile. "I met it. And it is not what I feared. But it is still not my friend." In the evenings, he wrote, clay tablet after clay tablet, each pressed with signs. His life translated into symbols, into something that might survive him. Sometimes he wondered if anyone would ever read them. But still, he wrote, "The river runs, the river dries. But if I carve its shape in stone, will others remember how it once sang?" He thought often of the gods, how quiet they had become. Not absent, just watchful. He no longer begged for answers from them. He no longer cursed them either. He had made peace with their silence, because he had finally understood the gift they had given him, and all mortals, the weight of impermanence. If we lived forever, he wrote, we would build nothing, we would love no one, we would wait, and never become, but because we end, we build, we love, we try, we fail, we tell stories, we reach, we rise. He looked at the sun, setting over Uruk, the same city he had once ruled with arrogance, The same towers he had once viewed as his personal monument. Now he saw them as something else. Not proof of his power, but proof he had been here, that he had mattered, that he had loved. And in the hush before nightfall he whispered, "Let my tomb be forgotten. Let my bones turn to dust. But let these words live. Let them find the ear of a stranger 1,000 years from now. Let them say, once there was a man who lost his friend and tried to find the secret of death. And though he failed, he found something greater." And so the river ran on, carrying his words, carrying us. Time, as always, moved forward. The city changed, not quickly, but steadily. Streets widened, walls repaired, sons became fathers, fathers became names, and Gilgamesh grew older. Not all at once, but in the slow way that time marks kings. His stride shortened, his voice deepened into gravel. He rose later, slept longer, but his mind, sharp as ever. He watched new warriors train in the courtyards. He listened to councilmen argue about grain and border disputes, and sometimes smiled to himself. Once he would have shouted. Now he simply said, "Let the people eat first. Let the walls stand second. Let the rest settle itself." He no longer dreamed of monsters. Instead, he dreamed of water, of rivers, endless and deep, running beneath the surface of the world. And Enkidu, always Enkidu, walking beside him, silent, smiling. The scribes had filled dozens of tablets with his words, but he wasn't finished. "Tell them," he said, "that I wept, that I failed, that I cursed the gods, that I learned too late, but also tell them that I tried, that I loved fiercely, that I sought wisdom even in grief, that I held a broken world in my hands and did not crush it." One morning, he awoke and knew, without pain or fear, that his end was near. He rose, bathed, dressed in a simple robe. No crown, no scepter. He walked through Uruk one final time. No one stopped him. Some bowed, some touched their hearts, some wept, but no one spoke, because they understood. This was his last walk. At the foot of the western gate, where the sun sets into sand, he sat down on a stone bench, watched the children run, watched the birds settle, watched the city breathe. He smiled. It was always going to end, he whispered. But what a thing it was. And when night came, it did not bring cold. It brought quiet, and stars, and stillness, and the breath of a king, his last, fell into the river beneath the world. And in the city of Uruk, the bells tolled not in mourning, but in gratitude, for the king who had defied death, for the man who had learned to live, for the name carved in stone and in hearts. Years passed, then decades. Uruk grew, faded, rebuilt. Its people changed, its streets filled with new voices. New kings wore the crown, new hands shaped the bricks. But somewhere deep within the temple vaults, in a sealed clay jar, beneath layers of dust and time, the tablets remained. 600 lines pressed by careful hands, baked in the sun. Lines that began, "He who saw the deep, the foundation of the land, who knew the ways, was wise in all things." A young scholar, centuries later, uncovered them. He wiped dust from the wedge-shaped script, whispering as he translated, "Gilgamesh." He did not know the sound of the name, but he felt the weight of it. He read of Uruk, of lions and cedar trees, of gods and demons, of a wild man named Enkidu, of a journey for eternal life, and of a king who failed and was transformed. The scholar wept, not because it was sad, but because it was true. Even now, even still. He copied the words. He passed them on. Others read them, spoke them, rewrote them in other tongues, and slowly, Gilgamesh lived again, not in body, but in story. He became more than a name. He became a mirror for every man who lost a brother, for every woman who mourned, for every soul who looked into the night and wondered, what happens when I'm gone? And through that question, the answer lived. Love, grief, memory, and the words we leave behind. So, Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, who once sought to defeat death, who once tried to become a god, who once wept beside a grave, was not lost. He was read. He was remembered. He was loved. And perhaps that is how immortality truly begins.